The president meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince at the White House today, but the headline ended up being his call with Vladimir Putin, congratulating the Russian leader on his election win, which was not a surprise, but got a lot of reaction here in Washington and in Arizona. There's Senator McCain's statement. An American president does not lead the free world by congratulating dictators on winning sham elections, and by doing so with Vladimir Putin, President Trump insulted every Russian citizen who was denied the right to vote in a free and fair election to determine their country's future, including the countless Russian patriots who have risked so much to protest and resist Putin's regime. With that, let's bring in our panel. Jonah Goldberg, senior editor at National Review, Amy Walter, national editor for the Cook Political Report, and Ben Domenech, publisher at The Federalist. Ben, thoughts on the reaction, a lot of it here in Washington, to this statement and this communication?
Well, it's a different situation now in terms of our relationship with Russia than it was several years ago when we saw President Obama giving congratulations to Putin over a recent election. This is a situation that I think it's going to turn into its own sort of form of a reset or an attempt by the Trump administration to engage in that behavior. Obviously, they want to get rid of this investigation that has been ongoing. They want it to come to a conclusion, and they want to talk to Putin about a number of different factors. But the domestic scenario here, the situation in Washington, really hasn't allowed them to do that yet.
Amy.
But it is very different from the time of Obama, and even very different from just a couple of months ago, because this is no longer just simply about Russia meddling in the election. We're now talking about poisoning of in Britain. We have not had discussions yet on that. Apparently, the president did not raise that issue with Putin. So I think this is one of those issues that has been ongoing since the president has gotten into town that divides the Republican Party, much the way that the issue of trade divides the party, that you're going to have folks in the camp that say there should be absolutely no relationship with Putin. He's a bad dude. We should always see him as a bad dude. Don't ever try to make this relationship work. And folks that are aligned with the president who do want to see something happening. But the bottom line is there's a whole lot that has happened, even in the last couple of months, that the fact that the president didn't raise that, I think, is a good part of the reason why so many Republicans are worried.
I mean, he's talking about the poisoning in Great Britain or the sanctions that this administration has put on the Russian regime. Doesn't talk about that.
Right. No, there's this weird double game going on where the administration actually has been quite tough on Russia. Donald Trump hasn't been, rhetorically, and it sets people off around Washington because of all of the other baggage that we were referring to here. I agree, a lot of things have changed. One thing hasn't changed. Russia is not a democracy. And I didn't like it when Barack Obama talked about, congratulated Vladimir Putin. I don't like it when Donald Trump does it for the simple reason, and I don't like it when Sarah Sanders says we can't dictate how they do things in Russia. We're not talking about dictating. We're just talking about bearing witness to the truth, which is that it's a dictatorship, it's an authoritarian regime, and this was a sham election. And America was supposed to stand for some of that stuff.
But, you point out that this regime, that the Russian regime, is facing a lot of sanctions from the U.S.
I agree. It's this weird thing. It's almost like just Trump can't bring himself to say the words, maybe because he doesn't care about the rhetorical niceties, maybe because he has this idea about having a relationship with Putin, maybe just because he wants to see people's heads explode on MSNBC. I mean, I don't, it may be all of the above, but rhetoric matters, and telling the truth about this regime is worthwhile.
I want to turn to domestic politics now. A lot hangs in the balance. Government funding. Is there a DACA deal? Let's listen to the DACA deal back and forth.
The deal that was offered earlier this week included a 3-year extension for DACA in exchange for the border wall and border security funding.
I would probably favor a short-term solution, 3 years for 3 years of funding.
I just had a meeting with a variety of senators who seemed surprised that some of the offers made by the administration were rejected out of hand.
But there are going to be lots of opportunities for us to try and help the DACA kids. Right now, the president, as he did a few weeks ago, is standing in the way.
But is it fair to say that because, you know, the president says it's the Democrats who don't want to take this deal? They want it as an election issue.
I think the Democrats clearly do want it as an election issue. But in addition to that, I think you have a situation here where we're dealing with a bill that is a complete mess. I mean, it has all these different priorities smashed into it in different ways that don't fit. We're still seeing a couple of those come to light. I don't think there is any real chance of a deal at this juncture, just given the politics of this issue. And it's only going to continue to be demagogued as we go forward. The reality is that earlier in the show, you know, they were talking about, well, John Cornyn was saying that, you know, this is the way that business works now and things can't really work. Well, guess what? That's what things are going to look like for the future forever, unless we have a fundamental change in the way that the Senate and the Congress behaves.
Amy, what about funding? I mean, we're probably going to have a snow day tomorrow.
Yes.
Which means that the week gets shorter.
Right.
And probably into the weekend.
Yes. I don't think we're going to see a government shutdown, but I agree with Ben that what we are going to see is sort of a big mess of a bill with nobody getting really the priorities that they really truly wanted to see out of this. Conservatives are going to be upset at some of these things. Obviously, Democrats are going to be upset. We have this funding for a project in New York that the president's very upset with, that a lot of folks in New York wanted to see. But the bottom line really is that this is it. This is the last piece of legislating we're going to see, I think, for the rest of the year. So whatever gets done in this bill is what's going to get done. And if not, well, guess what? Got to wait till 2019.
It's a huge gamble, too, on the part of Republicans to do that, basically saying we're going to rest on our laurel, our singular achievement of this tax bill.
Yep.
And that's
I mean, this is why people hate Washington.
It's one of the reasons.
One of the reasons.